It started on what should have been a peaceful Saturday morning. My wife, Emily, walked outside with her coffee in hand, only to find a crisp white envelope tucked into the mailbox. It was stamped with the HOA's bold logo, which immediately put her on edge. She tore it open and sighed in disbelief. Inside was a notice stating she owed a $90 fine for failure to properly store trash receptacles. According to the letter, she had left our trash cans visible for a single night after collection day. Emily shook her head, muttering, "Are they serious?" She knew exactly who was behind this, Karen. Every neighborhood seemed to have one, and ours came with the full stereotype: sunglasses, clipboard, and an obsession with rules. Karen treated the HOA like her personal kingdom. She spent her afternoons patrolling the streets, snapping pictures, jotting down violations, and sending fines like clockwork. This wasn't the first time she tried to ticket us for something ridiculous. Emily, however, wasn't one to be bullied. Later that afternoon, Karen showed up in person, strutting up the walkway as if she owned the place. She didn't bother with small talk. "You've been fined $90. Pay up now, or you'll face consequences," she demanded, waving a printed sheet in Emily's face. Emily raised an eyebrow, keeping her composure. "Karen, I'm not paying for something this absurd. The trash was out for one night, and you know it." Karen's face flushed crimson, her lips tightening into a thin line. She wasn't used to anyone refusing her. Her voice rose an octave as she snapped, "If you won't pay, I'll call the cops. You'll regret this." Emily crossed her arms, utterly unfazed. She knew Karen had no real power, but she also knew this drama wasn't over. Karen wasn't bluffing. Within minutes of storming off our porch, she was in the middle of the cul-de-sac with her phone glued to her ear, pacing back and forth while dramatically gesturing as though she were narrating a crime in progress. "Yes, officer, she's refusing to comply with HOA regulations. She's hostile," her shrill voice carried loud enough for the neighbors to hear. People peeked through their blinds, curtains shifting as whispers passed from one house to another. By the time Karen hung up, she had a smug, triumphant look plastered across her face. 20 minutes later, the distant hum of sirens gave way to two police cruisers pulling onto our quiet street. Lights flashed as they parked, instantly turning the calm neighborhood into a spectacle. Kids riding bikes stopped to watch, while adults stepped quietly onto porches, eager to see what chaos Karen had stirred this time. Karen practically sprinted to the officers, pointing toward our house like she had uncovered a criminal mastermind. "That's her. She's breaking community laws. She refuses to follow authority," Karen declared, breathless with manufactured outrage. The officers approached Emily, who was sitting calmly on the porch swing with her coffee. "Ma'am, we received a call about a dispute," one officer said politely. Emily set her cup down and nodded. "I assume this is about the so-called fine?" she asked, her voice level and steady. Karen hovered just a few feet away, arms crossed, tapping her foot impatiently. She wore the grin of someone who believed she was moments away from sweet victory, convinced Emily would either be ticketed or escorted away in shame. What Karen didn't know, however, was that Emily wasn't intimidated in the slightest. In fact, she was holding a trump card that would flip the entire situation on its head. The officers stood patiently in front of Emily, waiting for her to explain her side. She leaned back slightly in the porch swing, calm and unbothered, as if this entire confrontation was more amusing than threatening. "Officers," she began evenly, "this is a civil issue, not a criminal one. The HOA thinks they can enforce fines like the police, but that's simply not how the law works." One officer tilted his head, clearly skeptical but attentive. Before Karen could cut in with another tirade, Emily reached into her purse and pulled out a small leather case. With a practiced flick, she opened it, revealing her official badge and identification. The sunlight gleamed off the polished metal. "I'm an assistant state prosecutor," Emily said matter-of-factly. The shift in the officer's demeanor was immediate. Their posture straightened, voices softened, and respect filled their tone. "Ma'am, we didn't realize," one said quickly. Karen's grin collapsed. She can't just, she's making that up." Karen sputtered, her eyes darting nervously between the officers and Emily. But Emily wasn't done. She stood, meeting Karen's glare with an air of authority. "Actually, Karen, I'm not making anything up. HOA fines are civil matters handled through small claims courts if pursued. The police have zero jurisdiction here. Calling them for this is a misuse of emergency resources." The officers nodded in agreement, clearly siding with Emily now. "She's right," one confirmed. "This isn't a police matter." Karen's jaw dropped, her confidence draining away. She opened her mouth to argue again, but the words tangled, leaving her standing there in stunned silence. The neighbors, who had been quietly gathering closer, exchanged hushed laughs and knowing glances. For once, the neighborhood's so-called enforcer had been outmaneuvered, and publicly put in her place. Karen's face turned a deeper shade of red as the reality sank in. The cops weren't here to drag Emily away, they were siding with her. Desperation bubbled up in her voice as she tried to regain control of the situation. "Officers, she's lying. She's always breaking the rules. If you don't do something, the whole neighborhood will fall apart." Her words came out shrill, shaky, and unconvincing. The senior officer, clearly unimpressed, adjusted his belt and looked Karen straight in the eye. "Ma'am, HOA fines are not criminal offenses. This call was a misuse of police resources. You need to be careful, false or exaggerated reports can carry consequences." His tone was stern, not the sympathetic ear Karen was used to manipulating. Karen froze, stunned that her attempt to assert dominance had completely backfired. "But I was just doing my job," she stammered weakly, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline. The officer shook his head. "No, ma'am. This isn't your job. And it's certainly not ours." By now, neighbors had stepped out of their homes, phones discreetly recording, smirks spreading as the self-proclaimed neighborhood sheriff got publicly scolded. A murmur of laughter passed through the crowd when Karen tried to argue again, only to be cut off by the officer repeating firmly, "That's enough." Emily, arms crossed, watched calmly, her expression unreadable. She didn't need to gloat, the sight of Karen being put in her place was more than enough. For years, residents had endured Karen's constant nitpicking and petty fines. Now, for the first time, she looked small, powerless. As the officers wrapped up, one quietly apologized again to Emily, while Karen stood frozen in humiliation. The neighborhood bully had finally been exposed, and the weight of her reputation was crumbling right before everyone's eyes. The officers offered Emily a polite nod before returning to their cruisers, leaving behind a street buzzing with whispers. Karen, however, was left standing stiffly in the middle of the cul-de-sac, clutching her clipboard as though it could still shield her from the humiliation she had just endured. Her once smug expression was gone, replaced with a scowl and the unmistakable look of someone who had just lost control. Emily finally stood and walked a few steps closer, her calm presence only making Karen's discomfort worse. She spoke softly but firmly, her words cutting through the silence. "Karen, let this be a lesson. Next time you want to throw your weight around, make sure you actually have authority. Otherwise, you'll just embarrass yourself again." Karen's lips trembled as if she wanted to fire back, but no words came. Instead, she spun on her heel and stormed off toward her house, the sound of her shoes clapping angrily against the pavement. The neighbors chuckled quietly, some openly smiling, while others clapped Emily on the back and muttered things like, "Finally, someone stood up to her." From that day forward, everything changed. The stream of ridiculous HOA fines dried up overnight. Karen still walked the neighborhood, but without the same swagger or clipboard dominance she once flaunted. It was clear she had been deflated, her authority stripped in front of the very people she tried to intimidate. As for Emily, she didn't brag or boast. She returned to her normal routine, sipping coffee on the porch as though nothing had happened. Yet the neighbors treated her differently now, with respect and even admiration. And while she never sought the spotlight, everyone knew the truth. In this neighborhood showdown, Emily had proven she outranked them all.